Dusty's quotes about Jose Abreu yesterday were pretty interesting, as a matter of fact, trying to bring them up. It's kind of interesting looking at this Dustyism. And, look, all due respect to Dusty, I think he's done a tremendous job this year. I certainly respect the career that Jose Abreu's had. This has not been a good year, and Jose Abreu's a really good career. Dusty said this yesterday. I'm hoping that we get the Abreu that we signed. That would be huge. He also said, huge defensively, how much he missed him, which you can tell we've missed him some, and offensively big time. You've missed Jose Abreu offensively big time? Like, Yainer Diaz has been killing the baseball. Yeah. I don't really understand that quote from Dusty Baker. And then our friends from Climbing's Tal Hill, they quote tweeted and put some numbers. Yainer Diaz at first base this year, albeit a small sample size, 393 average over a 1,200 OPS. He's also saved one run defensively, which that's pretty impressive for a guy that no one thinks that can play first base all that well. And I really don't think he can play first base all that well right now. I don't think it's a very difficult position for an athletic guy like Yainer Diaz to grow into, though. And then Jose Abreu at first base, 239 with a 648 OPS. How are you missing Jose Abreu's bat offensively when Yainer Diaz has been clearly better?
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't know if that's just kind of like the pseudo storyline that he wants to push. Like, with Singleton struggling and everybody starting to point a finger and get into debates about John Singleton, the one thing that Dusty might see is, well, now we can work the narrative. You missed Abreu. It's the guy that we need to have. It's the guy that we went out and got for a reason. No, I don't think it got to that point because, as you mentioned, Yainer was able to fill in, it very, very well, very capably. We did see the one outburst from Singleton with the two bombs, but overall, defensively is the only way that you could possibly bring up some kind of argument. And we've already said, Abreu's not an above-average first baseman by any means. He just understands by repetition alone, playing it all these years, footwork and simple things. Yeah,
he's got way more experience.
Situational decisions as well. Like we talked about the other day, fielding the grounder. Do you try the double play? Do you go home? Do you get the out at first right away? Those are things you learn by getting into those positions. He hasn't been there.
I think that if Yainer's going to play a lot of first, and look, I don't think that Yainer's going to play first base every day for at least a couple more years because of Abreu's contract. Now, I think that you could potentially move Yainer to first base in 2026. Like, if you were to sign Yainer Diaz to one of those contracts that Dana Brown and the Braves were known for, where you sign a player very, very early, a Yordan type of deal where you're buying out years of arbitration and years of free agency, I could see if they sign Yainer Diaz to a long-term deal where they want to move him to first base to save his legs and to save his bat, because catchers don't have as good of offensive numbers because of the wear and tear of being a catcher.
We talked about with Rushman.
And there are tons of examples. Now, there's also examples that go against that, and Mike Piazza, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have a guy that's catching every day versus a guy that's playing first base every day, it's going to cost you about 75 plate appearances over the course of a year. And if you love what that guy gives you offensively, you want more of the volume of it as opposed to having to get a lot of days off. But still, if Yainer were to be a permanent first baseman, that's still not going to come until Abreu's contract is done, until Abreu's no longer on this team. So there's still time for him to learn the position, and I don't even think it's imminent. I don't think it's this offseason. I don't think it's next offseason. Now, the offseason after that. But I think that Yainer, with one offseason, a spring training, focusing on only playing first base, he's a good enough athlete to pick it up. He's a far better athlete than Jose Abreu is.
Yeah, and when you start thinking about it, it's not like a complex position. You're not trying to understand playing center field and routes to baseballs and a lot more decision making goes on there. I mean, it's footwork a lot, and it's being able to at least field your position. And as a catcher, used to smothering ground balls and being able to understand. He made a nice play the other day in terms of kind of getting the mitt on a tough in between hop and picking it right on the right hop and making a play. So I think it's going to get better. I think some of it comes naturally to him, as you mentioned. And I think you're probably right. I mean, that you've got your essential DH left fielder, but more DH than left field if we have it our way for the next several years. But for Yainer to be that big bat or one of those big bats in the middle of the lineup with him, if there's a way that you take a little load off the wheels to give him a little bit more time at the plate so he can do more things productively offensively, you start doing it now.
3403, who is Diaz allowed to catch? We're better with him behind the plate. Yes, I'm glad he's at least playing, but come on. It seems like he's allowed to catch Hunter Brown and JP France, and that's about it.
Yep, I think you're right. I think that's where it's probably limited to now, especially because there's such a work in progress going on with Javier and Framber. I mean, the last thing you can afford to, and you alluded to it when we were talking about all the different struggles with Framber, it's been hot and cold, but the main thing is now you're starting to deal with emotions as well. It's one thing if you're dealing with mechanics or velocity or things that just happen with pitchers. But the fact that we've seen him at his worst before the sports psychologist and the psychologist that is Maldi behind the dish, and you were starting to see it's ugly, his ugly other side head rear in terms of the way his thinking gets, how emotional he gets when things don't go his way. And when he gives up a bomb and then he goes after the next hitter and it's happened twice, that's just another thing that you look at and say, okay, from that standpoint alone, I think Maldi's the guy that can get through to him, calm him down, and try to reel him in. Whereas I don't know how much he's listening to Yainer, if Yainer's like, take it easy, big dog, and comes out there to talk to him.
Perhaps we've buried the lead because yesterday in the second inning of the Astros game, Justin Verlander had some pitch comm problems. He couldn't hear. I went back and looked and watched the pitches of that.
Yeah.
He didn't shake off.
No. I thought the first one he knew the clock was running down.
Well, that's what Alex Cora thinks.
Well, I mean, I kind of saw it. I was like, no, the pitch. Look, it's savvy baseball, and a lot of pitchers do it. Some umpires take exception to it. Some umpires are cool with it.
Yeah, I don't see him. I didn't see him shaking off though. Like Alex Cora said that he shook off 5 times.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I didn't see it, Justin. Now the camera doesn't show Verlander the entire time, but I didn't see Verlander shake off once.
What I was talking about was, I think in terms of whatever he was doing, processing the pitch, thinking about what he was going to throw, sequencing, etc. He looked up and the clock was running out, and I thought rather than him take one for the team with a ball.
Sure, I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
that's what Alex Cora thought.
Okay.
I disagree. I don't think that's what. I think he lost the pitch comm. I really do. You think the Cora was onto something here?
Whether Cora is right or wrong, it's savvy baseball. I don't mind JV doing it. I don't mind him doing what he did. And if he gets away with it, then no harm, no foul, and you end up not having to have a ball in the count. But I also think that I've seen enough baseball this year alone with these guys that veteran pitchers especially, when they know the clock's running down, they can pull that one out of their hat.
That's what Cora was alleging.
Literally.
That's what Cora was alleging. Now, maybe that was the case. But the interaction between the two, Cora's telling Justin Verlander to go pitch. Justin Verlander said to do something.
Yep.
That the cameras, the TV caught for sure, and Blum immediately goes, "Did you hear that?"
We all did.
The best part about that, though, from Justin Verlander was like he said it in such a nonchalant way, like he was swatting off a fly. Like, I'm done with you, man. Like, go do what I told you to do, go off, and then I'm just going to go over here and pitch. He's like, get out of here, man. Like, I love that interaction with Verlander, just swatting off Alex Cora for the little fly that he is.
Well, that's, again, when we talk about veteran leadership and what Justin brings to the table, you think about if that's Fromber. You think about if it's a guy that can get emotional. That's something that could rattle the cage of a young pitcher if the opposing manager came out and started pointing fingers. And JV, like you said, was just brush your shoulders off. I'm done with you. He kind of glanced into the dugout before he threw the next pitch, and then he proceeded to just mow the guy down like it was nothing and move on. Let's turn the page.
Yeah, I don't think that was like a awakening his sleeping giant or anything, because I think Verlander was going to pitch well yesterday no matter what. His stuff was so good. But it's one of those, why bother? Like, why even bother if you're Cora in that spot, having that exchange